Name it. You're going up to the debate, and you've got the butterflies in your stomach. You say, I know I'm fearful, but that fear, because I've prepared, can now turn into positive energy. And this isn't a gimmick. This is true. If you've been watching the Olympics, you'll know that it is at the Olympics that the most world records are set. On average, if you look over the years. And why is that? It's because when we are placed in positions of stress, having prepared, we have our best performances. And just as that is true with the Olympics, so too is it true with you in a debate or an interview. If you've prepared, you actually will have better recall. If you've prepared, you'll actually have more emotional presentation, appropriate emotional presentation. So when you fear, or when you feel fearful, if you've prepared, you tell yourself, this is good. This is good because I will have my maximum performance today. And that's not a gimmick. That's the truth. Okay, so now let's leave our fear behind, and we're marching ahead to address a new question. I told you that people will remember how you made them feel, so next we need to know, what kind of vocal delivery produces the best emotional response in audiences? Here's what the research will tell us. None of it will be surprising, by the way. For speech delivery to be best received, it has to meet 3 criteria. It has to be clear and understood on first hearing. Well, that makes sense. If you want to be received, you've got to be understood. Got it. 2, it has to repeatedly re-engage the audience or reawaken the audience. In this culture of short attention spans, you need to do audio tricks that get people to listen again. Even in a 10-minute speech, you need to insert vocal tricks that will re-engage your audience, and I'll be mentioning those. And then finally, to have that delivery best received, you need to convey explicit emotion, and it needs to be appropriate. So those are the 3 criteria, but I guess it raises another question. Well, what can you do to make your speech clear? And what can you do to keep re-engaging your audience? And what can you do to have explicit emotion that's appropriate? And I will tell you. We're going to look at these tools, and I've boiled it down. If you were in my public speaking class, we'd have numerous tools. We might have 12. I'd go through them, but I've boiled it down to 3 for you today. These are the tools in your toolbox that you will take out and you will insert them in every speech that you give. And the tools that we're focusing on are pace, volume, and tone. I'll give a definition for each, and then I'll explain how they can be used to re-engage your audience and how to insert the appropriate emotion into your speech. Let's begin with pace. Pace, as you can imagine, as you will know, is the speed at which you deliver your speech. And it is necessary for clarity. If you speak too quickly, you simply cannot be clear. There are times where you want to speak more quickly to show that you're passionate, but on the whole, if you are a candidate, if you're any public speaker, fight the rush. Typically, if you fight the rush, you'll be more clear, and better than that, you won't use vocal crutches. Vocal crutches are things like and ah and like and so and you know. We want to eliminate those. Why do we want to eliminate them? Because when you use them, you sound less authoritative. We tend to think, if I use slower pace, it will sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. The opposite is true. If you use slower pace, it sounds like you're thoughtful. it sounds like you're authoritative. Now, there is a limit, of course. If you are stopping awkwardly between every sentence or word, of course, eventually people are going to begin wondering if you're having a stroke. You're not having a stroke. You're having a brain fart. But the point would be, practice your material, but speak slowly, and you'll come off with more authority. The other side of it, in addition to clarity, I said that it's not just about clarity, it's also about re-engagement of your audience. Truly, if you slow down your speech, people will listen. It's a device that we use. It's like, why is he doing that? I remember, as a journalist, I had to deliver a story about some miners who had died. And I remember speaking it like this. I said, all 16 men are dead. There was a direct pause between each of those words because the gravity of the situation was so severe, I wanted it to sink in. But we do the same thing. And when you have those pauses, it makes people think. He's really delivering that very slowly. That must be important, and it will be. So we've talked about clarity, re-engagement as well. What about faster pace? Yes, you can use faster pace for dramatic effect, but I'm going to cover that a little bit more thoroughly when we get to volume, because what you will see is when you speak quickly, you also raise your volume. And because you do that naturally, I'll cover it under volume. When do you do this? Well, let the content dictate. I'm telling you this is a tool to employ in order to re-engage your audience or to have clarity. When do you do it? When the content dictates. That's going to be up to you to decide. One last thing that I'll say about pace, you should mark it on your speech. What? Have you heard of these things? They're called punctuation marks. They are things like question marks and exclamation marks. You can do something very similar, marking your speech for pace. Here's what I do. If I want something to be a pause, I put a slash. Where the slash appears on my speech, on my written speech, I know a pause goes there. Where I want my speech to slow down, I put a broken underline. So if I see a broken underline under a phrase in my speech, that means slow down at that point. In the same way that you would use an exclamation mark or a question mark, you can use these kind of symbols in order to remind yourself, slow down here or pause here. Let's move to volume. Volume, of course, is the loudness or softness of the sound of your vocal delivery. Why do we need volume? Well, we need volume for clarity. Here's the first rule of volume. Always speak a little bit louder than you would in a normal conversation. Right now, even though I have the aid of a microphone, I'm still projecting more than I normally would. Part of that is being a 56-year-old man who's partly deaf. But I also know that as a public speaker, I should be a little more dramatic in my volume. Don't scream, but just be able to project a bit more even when you have a microphone. In terms of volume, don't be a one-trick pony. And by that I mean, also realize that soft volume can be equally effective at re-engaging your audience. Remember, I keep going back to this notion that what you want to do is make your speech the kind of speech that will make people like you. Why do they like you? Because it was clear and because it kept re-engaging them. How does volume re-engage? Sometimes lower volume can make your audience lean in. Sometimes lower volume makes people wonder, why is he being so intimate? What does he have to say? It must be important. It must be a secret. We tend to react because we've been conditioned when someone is speaking more quietly that this is intimate. This is something that is just for me. So employ that strategy. Where do you do it? The content will dictate. One last thing, volume, more so than pace, really allows you to use emotion. But it has to be appropriate. The content will dictate. When are you more apt to use very loud volume? When you're frustrated, when you're angry, or when you're joyful. So find those places in your speech where the content is frustrated, where the content is angry, where it is joyful, and make sure that your volume is also louder to be able to show your audience, this is my emotional tone. I'm going to talk more about emotion now as we look at tone. Oh, one last thing. How do you mark volume? Solid underline. Solid underline and bold. So when I'm marking my speech and I know that I want to punch something, I will put down on the page and a solid underline with bold. There, that's actually on my page. I will put down on my page. Sorry, I was sounding a little bit, I don't know, maybe a black preacher. But that is what you do. It's as simple as that. It really is. And go over your speech beforehand. Make sure that the words feel right in your mouth. Make sure that you can recognize what you've done. I know you're not familiar with the underline and the bold, so practice it a few times with the underline and the bold. And now we go to tone. Tone is the emotion relayed by the voice. We know as parents that we use the expression, don't use that tone with me. And what we're actually saying is, don't use that emotion with me. That's what we're really translating it as. Tone is necessary because it conveys the explicit emotion that the audience can identify with and appreciate. And human beings are emotional beings. We really cannot relate to robots. We really can't. I mean, we think they're cool, we think they're interesting, but we don't tend to feel emotional toward that monotone voice. We feel more aligned with someone who is able to express themselves. We do. So we want to make sure that we have appropriate tone in our speeches. This is a bit tricky, though. What is appropriate tone? Appropriate tone is, again, dictated by content, but, and this is a simple rule, that which doesn't make you look crazy. And maybe you've got someone, a husband or a wife or a close friend, deliver it like you think you're going to deliver it, and ask them, did I look crazy? And if they say yes, then ratchet it back a bit. And if they said, well, actually, I didn't, was that tone? Were you doing, then you might want to just ratchet it up a bit. And here's what you do. Don't try to tell yourself, don't write in the margins. I am going to get you to write in the margins, but don't write in the margins, sound angry. No. Don't write in the margins, sound happy. No, no. Here's what you write. Smile, or frown, or knit your eyes together, scowl. This is really interesting. You see, human beings can do something physical, and it elicits an emotional response. If you want to get authentic tone in your speech, get your face to do the work, and your voice will follow. See, writing down sound happy, you won't know what to do. What does happy sound like? But if you write down smile here, smile wide here, and it's in the columns at the side of your speech, but you notice it, your voice will follow. We've known this for a long time from psychology that a physical action, a controlled physical action, elicits a response that is emotional. If I were to, and I won't do this to you, but if I were to stand up here and start yawning, all of you would start yawning. And not only that, you would feel tired. A forced physical action would cause, see, I did it, yeah, just the word yawn. Now, if I said to you, start laughing, and you liked me enough that you felt comfortable, if we all started laughing, you would feel genuine emotional euphoria. You would. Because we can trick our bodies through a intentional physical action to have an emotional response. So do that in your speeches. It's important to have emotion because we as human beings need to see emotion in order to like somebody. Again, put that in the margin of your speech. That's how you do that in terms, as opposed to, there's no real line. I will write in the margins of my speech, have a frown or smile broadly, something like that. One last little mention about what your speech should look like on paper. Don't write out in complete paragraphs. Use large print. Right now on my paper, I'll just show you. I know you can't see it at the back, but I've got 14 or 16 point font. And I am following this. Believe it or not, I know it looks like I'm going off the cuff, but I'm basically reading off this page. Because I've done this presentation before, I know where I'm going to go, and you should too, by the way. You should know your speech well enough that you can walk away from the podium when you need to. Actually, since I brought that up, should you memorize? This will be a question. Should I memorize my speech? No. No, do not memorize your speech, but know it so well that you can walk away when you want. Know it so well that you can read from your speech but still make eye contact with the audience. Now, I admit, I have an advantage. I've done this material before. I promised you that I would try to give you the model to follow. I'm probably walking away from the podium too much. But when you are going from your speech, it is completely fine for you to be reading line by line as long as you look up. And if you're speaking slowly, the words will still be in your mind as you look up. And you'll come across just fine. So don't feel you have to memorize every speech that you write. You don't. Eventually, you'll come to know some material so well, you won't have to look at the page as much. But absolutely, absolutely, be willing to look at your audience as you're delivering, because that's where the confidence comes from. Back to the look of the page, use 14 or 16 point font. Don't write in full paragraphs, write sentence by sentence. Indicate slower pace or loud volume by the lines that I told you about. Put tone notes in the margins. And use subheadings to guide you through. For example, the subheading that I'm going to right now on my page, you won't see it on a slide, but it says talk about body language. So now, as our last portion of this first half, I'll talk about body language. This is what the experts tell us. The experts tell us, don't point. Don't point. They say it's a threatening motion. And so I'm just going with what the research says, so I don't point. But apparently what's very pleasant is a full hand. Somebody did a focus group, and they said the full hand works better. So I'm telling you that. Let me show you something else. If you don't have by the way, if you have a microphone, the microphone is not a magic wand. When you talk, see now the 80 guys are going crazy. When you have a microphone, your arm is stationary. It's locked. You can't move it. If you don't have a microphone, I'll show you what you should be doing with your hands. Have you ever watched reporters when they're delivering the news and they have just a mic here? This is what they do. For whatever reason, human beings love to see this downward triangle. Even now, you probably think, if you're a woman in the audience, you're saying, I want to date that guy. Sorry, ladies. for my friends in the AV department. It really is about giving your audience the notion that you are confident and authoritative, and the extent to which you slouch is the extent to which you're not believed in terms of your confidence and authority. So stand up straight, just like your mom always said. And related to standing up straight, we are at the end of our first portion of our delivery. We've done delivery, and we're going to move to content, but can you please stand up? Stand up. We're just trying to get refreshed for a moment. Okay, AV guys, I'm just going to set this mic down for a second. Oh, welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dave Haskell. I'll be guiding your tour through message content. I hear that you just had an excellent presentation on delivery. Well, oh, thank you. Thank you. So we've now reached the second part, and we are now looking at focusing on what you're saying, the content, and not focusing on how you're saying it, the delivery. You should know that when you are a candidate, the premier event for you will be the debate. The debates are the premier event because they are the event to which media show up. And now it may be the case that you only have an audience of 50, and you think this debate is not worthwhile. The reason it is worthwhile is the media tend to show up to debates, and then they write the article, and then the article goes out, and the thousands of people or tens of thousands of people in your community read it. So it's important that you take the debate seriously, and that you have content for the debate that will make you look good and not bad. One of the key things to remember is you need to have something to say in debates and in interviews that's worthwhile. You do. And in your case, as a candidate for the People's Party, you need to be doubly careful. They want to show you as a bigot. They want to show you as a racist. They want to give any kind of epithet they can, and they want it to apply to you. If they are going to paint you with that brush, don't give them the brush. And by that I mean your content will be very important. It needs to be thought out ahead of time. What I intend to do is to give you the parts of a debate that are typical, that you will be responsible for. And if you're the candidate or if you're helping the candidate, you'll say, okay, right, we're going to craft our portion for that part of the debate. And even though I'm focusing heavily on the debate, any of the things that we're talking about today can then be applied to interviews, can then be applied to, well, stump speeches. As you'll see, the opening remarks of a speech, by the way, the opening remarks of a debate actually can become your stump speech. I'll tell you a little bit more about that right now. When you are a candidate, you'll often be called to say a few words. That is your stump speech. Typically, it's around 2 minutes. You don't want people to become uninterested. Those 2 minutes are really who you are, what you stand for, why people should vote for you. We'll go into that in a bit more detail. That stump speech will also become your opening remarks at a debate. It really doesn't change too much. So I'll be focusing very heavily on the opening of a debate because in actuality, it will double as your stump speech. The parts of a debate look like this. You've got the opening statement. Again, keep in mind, opening statement, we'll spend more time on it because it is your stump speech. You'll also always have a closing statement. Those things are for sure if you're going into a debate. Everything you do in a debate can be transferred over to an interview. So be thinking of it when you're crafting your debate opening statement, closing statement, know that you're also going to be able to use it later in interviews, et cetera, et cetera. One thing you can't control, there will be questions during a debate. You won't know what they are. You'll have a sense of it if it's the environmental club who is calling the debate, and they do, then you know that the questions are going to revolve around the environment. And for sure, there's going to be, the majority of them will be about climate change or something like that. So you do need to prepare a response, and we'll talk more about that too. And then finally, you may even want to prepare, you must prepare challenges to your opponent as well. This is related to a debate, but also could be used in an interview. What would that look like? You know that you're going to be debating the Liberal. Well, you want to be able to say things about the performance of Justin Trudeau that your audience, who's been reading the flattering press, might not know. So you want to have those ideas written down as well. And I'll take you through each of these things. Okay, let's go to the opening statement. And again, I'll spend more time on this than other parts. So for your opening statement, you'll probably be asked to speak for 2 minutes. Maximum 5 minutes is what I've seen, although there are cases where it might be 8 minutes. But in a debate, because there are so many parties now, from Green to NDP to Liberal to Conservative and now PPC, it's typically 2 minutes. And you want to, before you begin speaking, remember what I told you about delivery. You want to think, how do I want to make these people feel? Even before we talk about content, we have to go back to the delivery idea. For your opening statement, it's a first impression. Therefore, how you make those people feel is going to be incredibly important. Yes, the content is going to be important, but what's your face doing? What's your body language doing? How does your voice sound? More than that, do that check in your mind. I want them to feel confident. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel whatever it is, but acknowledge it, know it, because that should be, even before the content, how do you want your opening statement to make them feel? First impressions are so important. Here are the other things that do get included. If it's a local debate, you want to include your background. You want to convince people that you're part of the community. People vote for people who are already leaders. We talked about this in the first session. So give them your bona fides. Say, here's what I've been doing in the community. You need to tell them about the People's Party in an opening statement. We're still relatively new. And as a result, many people have only heard a few things, and often it's negative. So let them know who the People's Party is and the accomplishments that the People's Party has already racked up. Let them know that. It's important to give a kick at your competitors. That can be something more related to your local community. Maybe the Liberal incumbent or even the Conservative incumbent has done something that people know of and don't like. You might mention it. Sadly, folks, negative stuff gets remembered and actually has more impact. So if you are trying to do a successful opening statement, it needs to have some kind of kick in there. And as long as it's truthful, it's also ethical. And then you want to give the reason why your party is the best. I do speak from experience on this. I made a mistake, though. Or did I? I'm not sure if I made a mistake. I wanted to share this with you. This was my first political debate, and the media really attacked me for it. This was in 2019, and I was speaking. It was my first political debate in Cambridge. That's where I was running. And I came out in a very combative way. A very combative way. And it resonated well with the audience. It really did. It really did. I had people who were clapping. I had people standing up and cheering. But the media just ripped into me. And then I changed my strategy. And I'm telling you this because I'm actually going to show you one of my opening statements. And what you'll see is I don't think I nailed it in terms of how I make people feel. Because I changed my strategy, because I let the media get into my head, I ratcheted myself back too far. I actually got to a point where I sound confident. I sound fine. I think the content is good. But if you watch it, and I'm going to show it to you, this opening statement, I don't think I nailed it on feeling. You'll watch it, and you'd forget it. You'd forget it because I haven't given enough to make you feel. So I just tell you that, and I've given you the explanation. I showed you this to say I did this debate, I came out combative, I got raked over the coals by media, I said I've got to change my strategy, I've got to ratchet it back, I did, and I think I didn't do it right. I think that what I should have done, I could have exchanged emotion. I'm bringing you along here, I'm saying you always need emotion. Yes, the media was saying you're too combative. Why couldn't I have been more joyful? Why couldn't I have exchanged my combativeness with an incredible spunk, right? I could have. That would have made people feel something. What am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you the media is going to get in your head. They're going to criticize you. If you come out strong, they'll want you to pull back. They'll force you to pull back. You can switch, but don't turn off. You can switch the emotion, don't turn off the emotion. So with that, let's see, I think I'm next. Here we go. So I'm going to show you the opening statement. Do we have good volume on this? Okay. Oh, poo. I'm just pressing it to get it to go? Yep. Okay. No, maybe I'm pressing the wrong button. Oh, okay, it might be rolling.
So let's begin with opening statements. Each debater has 2 minutes. Now, David Haskell from the People's Party. David.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Haskell. I have the honor of representing the People's Party tonight, and I'll begin that task by briefly detailing who we are and what we stand for. The People's Party, also known as the PPC, is the newest political party, and we're also the fastest growing in the history of Canada. Our candidates and supporters are of diverse races, ethnicities, and religions, and what unites us is our belief that Canada is unapologetically good, and its core values, rooted in the Western and Judeo-Christian tradition, have made it so. Now, you may find it curious that such a basic introduction needs to be made for the PPC, but it arises from the fact that the media really doesn't give us much coverage, and when it does, it tends to be very one-sided. Related to media coverage, you may have heard the leader of my party, Maxime Bernier, has been excluded from several televised debates. Perhaps what's more shocking is this: not one of the other federal party leaders has spoken out against that censorship. In fact, a few have repeatedly and openly encouraged it. In our opening statement tonight, it was requested that we touch on how each party can raise the bar on respectful political discourse. Let me tell you what immediately comes to my mind. It's this: if you truly want to encourage respectful political discourse, a great first step would be letting your opponent speak. It seems to me our democracy depends on it. And consider this: if the leader of a party is willing to censor a political rival because of ideological differences, can you ever believe that that same leader will defend your right to speak when you happen to disagree with the party? Thank you.
Let us go on to the next topic, which is religious freedom.
Now, you might say, well, that was okay. And it was okay. It was okay. but it was still forgettable. It was still forgettable. Yes, I think the content was good, but there was an opportunity to make people feel more. I could have expressed more joy. I didn't need to go hostile. I didn't need to go combative. But if I had gone a little bit more on the joyful side, especially for the crowd, I think it would have become more memorable. Because honestly, folks, they will not remember what you said, but they will remember the way you made them feel. For closing statements, again, before you speak, make sure that you know how you want your audience to feel. And what needs to go in the closing statement. We call this, in the field of public speaking, Monroe's motivated sequence. So it's a very special public speaking device. Monroe was the researcher who looked at it, and it goes like this. You want to remind them of the problem. You want to tell them about how they've been let down by the other parties. You've created a problem. Then you want to remind them of the solution. That's part 2. And you are the solution. And give them specifics as to why you are the solution. And then finally, you want a direct call to action. Here's my name, vote for me. I know you think that that's self-explanatory. Don't we always do that? Sometimes you don't. You actually need to get to the point where you say, do this. So this is Monroe's motivated sequence, and this is how you should do your closing statements. I have a closing statement here. I think that I'd have to find it. So we'll just forward legislation. There we go. Let's talk about the middle of the debate. You don't know what's going to come up in the middle of the debate. It's going to be a question and answer segment. But what you can do is you can prepare. And the way that you prepare is by first studying the policies of the People's Party. The booklet that's been handed to you, I have it right here. This is phenomenal. Back in 2019, we didn't have this. The first step in being able to answer questions is knowing this policy book cover to cover. Not only that, you should write it out in your own words. You see, it's not enough to know, but know how you're going to say it. So write it out in your own words. And then, if you're a real keener, what you might want to do is add to the evidence. There's a lot of evidence given in here, but it sure would help if you knew some other studies. For example, on housing, we know that immigration right now is affecting housing prices. But you might be able to say, well, TD Bank put out a study in 2023 that said exactly that the key driver of housing prices is high levels of immigration. Or you might say that Brian Greene from the University of British Columbia, a geographer, has been studying this, and he says the key driver of housing prices is immigration. Now, I know from 2019 that what I've just said is legit. So make sure that you, either you as the team for the candidate or the candidate themselves, have a few of those studies in your back pocket. We've got an international thought leader here as well, Eric Kaufman, back there. I don't have my glasses, but I kind of can make out his tie. And I would commend you to go and study that man's work, because he has the empirical heft that will pad out any of your speeches and any of your responses. So I'm saying to you, you need to create talking points on every issue. And there's so much good content out there, thanks to people like Eric, and thanks to Martin Mass, who also put together this policy book, and Max. You are going to be so well equipped. So make sure that you take advantage of that. Let me just do a time check. Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. We're exactly where we need to be, folks. We're exactly where we need to be. Don't recreate the wheel. What I'm saying is there are sources out there that have already done the research for you. Go and look at them. Here's another thought. Find a PPC candidate who ran in past elections, who dug up a lot of information, and see what that man or woman said in their speeches. Because I bet they've done the work for you too. I know this guy, David Haskell, who's got a YouTube channel, and he kept all his speeches from the PPC, and he did a lot of digging. So maybe he'd be useful. So let me commend that to you as well. Don't recreate the wheel. Let's move to, not that one. I want to close on a positive note. And I'll start with this. Believe it or not, no, I know you believe it. You are the good guys. You actually are. You actually have policies that will make society better. Maybe you've heard the expression before that there are those who want to sound good and there are those who want to do good. You are on the second team. You are on the team that wants to do good. So when someone tries to paint you as the bad guy, you need to remember that your policies actually make society better. And not only do you have to realize it, you need to understand it at the level of the empirical data. So let's take immigration, for example. If the other team, your opposing candidates, want to paint you into a corner and say, you guys are uncaring, you should be able to think and then say, no, we care the most. Do not cede that higher ground. You are the compassionate ones. Do you really care that people can feed their families? Do you care that people in Canada right now can feed their families? Yes, you do. Does that include people who are already new Canadians? Yes, it does. You're saying, we want everyone who's already here to prosper. How does that happen? Well, we've got to reduce the number of immigrants coming in right now so that we can take care of the people who are here right now, so that people who have new Canadian status can still afford a house, just like my kids can afford a house. We want everybody to be able to afford a house. We want everybody to be able to see the doctor, because right now, 18 months is the standard wait list to get in. And what's the driver of that? Too high immigration. We want to make sure everybody who's here right now can get treatment. We really care about people. We really do. So don't let someone paint you into a corner. Don't let them pretend like they're the ones who care. Because for everything they say, from immigration to monetary policy, etc., right now, 43% of the average person's wage goes to taxes. That's the most that is spent in a family is taxes today. How is that compassionate? If we really did care about our communities, we'd say we want everyone to be able to afford homes and food and cars and all the things that make life livable. That's the compassionate position. So let me say, as a closing, in fact, don't cede that higher ground. Remember that you are the good guys. Memorize the policies so that you can speak with authority. And finally, stand up straight. Thanks very much. And I understand that we're going to do some question and answers.
Yeah, I'm going to MC this time. So I'm asking you, please, to just get in line behind each mic, and also preferably not make speeches before you ask your questions. So please be respectful of the people in the room. And we have a speaker already here. So just make a 30-second introduction and ask your question. Donc tout le monde, si vous avez des questions, je vous demande de vous mettre en ligne et je vais traduire s'il y a quelqu'un qui préfère poser une question en français. Et je vous demande, s'il vous plaît, ne pas faire de discours de 5 minutes avant de poser une question, de respecter les gens dans la salle. Et on a déjà un conférencier qui donne un discours ici, donc ce n'est pas le temps pour vous de faire de discours. Merci.
Hi, my name's Kyle Canning. I'm from Newfoundland. Your anecdote about Rex Murphy is what drove this question, and I'm wondering if you think there's a style of public speaking that is uniquely Canadian, or if there's a style or styles of public speaking, respective to the different regional diversity within Canada, and any recommendations you would make on that for anybody in the room that needs to cater to a specific region.
I've never thought about that, but I think that there is a particular style that is an East Coast style that is more narrative-based. I think that we could all employ it and do really well with it. I think that the best public speaking involves the use of stories as well. So remember, we're trying to make people feel things. Stories are so much better at making people feel things. Aristotle tells us that there are different ways, different appeals to get people to be persuaded. He says that you can either use pathos, which is emotion, or logos, and he also says ethos, which is character or personal or celebrity testimony if you want. But let's just talk about pathos. Pathos being emotion, and then logos being the factual. The pathos is the feeling side, and the feeling side happens through narration and stories. So tell stories. What you want to do is that East Coast style. So let's all try to be more East Coast. Is that a good answer? Yeah, well, it is for you.
That's a great answer for me, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Eric Fleury. I'm the Canada record for Hall Elmer. Growing up as a kid, I'm just kidding. My question is very specific to volume.
Just a little louder for me. Can you put the? I'm a bit deaf. I was a rock star at one point.
Actually, it really
Actually, we didn't make it. That's why you don't recognize me. Carry on.
It's actually, this slight issue is actually great because I hate amplification for some reason. I tend to usually not use it. From your experience, do you think it's a mistake or a good strategy?
To use amplification?
To not use it.
I think that if you can use it, you should, because it allows you to use that quiet voice more effectively. I think that it really is a benefit to be able to use low volume, draw your audience in. So I would say amplification if you can.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dylan Young. I'm the candidate for Churchill-Kwachinook-Askey, the top half of Manitoba.
Oh, nice.
You were talking about volume earlier and the position of the microphone. I was just wondering if you're suggesting
And then I
that-
failed at it. Did you see
Yeah.
that? When I forgot for a moment. But I was too worked up. Anyway, carry on.
I thought you were going to elaborate on it later, but you were saying that it doesn't move at all, but when you were speaking the quiet voice, I thought you were raising the microphone quite close.
Thank you for pointing that out. When you do the quiet voice, you actually do have to go more close to the mic.
And I assume when you're being angry, just like further away?
Thank you. Yes, that's absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
This is just as a general rule, you lock it in. That's what you want to do. But then when you do those other volume techniques, make sure you bring it closer for low, a little bit further away when you're yelling.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Jim Torma, freedom fighting PPCer.
I know you.
Yeah, that's right. My comment or question to you is a lot of people are very scared to speak publicly, like you were saying. Fear was the big issue. How do you? I'd like you to repeat sort of what you were saying. How do people get comfortable in their skin to be real and their delivery? Because I think that's the most beneficial is when a person is truly authentic.
That's right. The way that you get more comfortable and authentic is by speaking more often. So let me encourage this. If you have a family, or if you have friends, as often as you can, create opportunities to do toasts or other kinds of celebratory speeches. I know you're saying, what? Because honestly, there is no better practice than practice. And what a great way to build your family. What a great way to build your community. Somebody just got a promotion, you say, great, let's go out for a drink, do a speech. If you two are the only ones there, do it. It's always better when there are more people there. But it's a form of cognitive behavioral therapy. So if you know anything about cognitive behavioral therapy or exposure therapy, it's by doing something, you become more able to do that thing. So create the opportunities. Thanks, Jim.
Hello, my name is David. I'm from Toronto. I with the board, and I was a candidate of record. And just noting on what you were saying about the emotional aspect versus the logical aspect of things. I found we were all probably in the position of being the unfortunate friend. Hey, friend, you're probably in a bad position here. And it's the good friend that usually is the one that ends up looking, well, saying the uncomfortable thing sometimes, the hard thing, right? So now I was just kind of hoping you could clarify a little bit, as opposed to, let's say, when you stick with the emotion, right? Some people are uncomfortable with certain emotions, right? You say joyful, hey, the world's going crazy, everybody. I don't know if that flies the same way as opposed to like addressing it authentically, even if you have to stay in fear for the moment and then draw it into maybe solution phase, which is more joyful if we have it presented at the time. But maybe could you comment a bit more on like, is there emotions to avoid altogether, or is there ways to handle each emotion where we are in this conversation?
One of the things to avoid for sure is when you are out of control. And there will be times, and I don't think this will happen in a political speech, where I'm not saying that often we think when people break down and cry, that's out of control. Actually, often it's not out of control. They can continue to speak. I don't think that's going to happen in a political speech. But where it is clear that your emotion is taken over, when you're so angry, that's not going to win you votes. That's not going to win confidence. You always have to give the appearance, no, you actually have to authentically always be in control. So even if you were becoming emotional, maybe something really was upsetting, and even if you're tearful, that's not losing control, but it would be losing control if you blubbered and turned into a pool on the floor and you couldn't continue speaking. That would be a problem. Or if you're so angry and you've seen people get angry and they start pounding and then they've lost where they are. You don't want that to happen. So that would be the danger of too much emotion. And you are going to be practicing. So you want to have the advantage of prepared spontaneity. And I know that sounds like a paradox, but you need to have practiced it. And because you've practiced it, you know what you're going to say, but you also know that you're being truthful, and therefore when you speak it, it will still come out with authenticity.
Hi, my name's Michael Bader. I'm a candidate record in Burlington. I'm the guy that asked the other question. So the gentleman there, he's from the East Coast. He has a feeling that, hey, maybe regionally I should speak to people different. So my question is in the vein of that, but it's in the vein of living in an area like GTA. So sometimes I find when I go out and I'm hanging out with the boys at hockey, or it's the truckers, you're doing that kind of speech, you might make it a bit different. There might be metaphors and colloquialisms, etc. But then you might find yourself with English as a second language, even within our own country. If I go to Quebec, I might not know French as well, so now I'm struggling to hear. I could be from Poland, I could be from India. So what is your recommendation if I'm going to speak to a general? I think I'm good at reading a crowd, whether to be more professional, use higher vocabulary, and then sometimes just be one of the boys, so to speak. Those would be the extent. But what if I'm speaking to mix? I've got my French Canadians, I've got my Hindu, the Polish people, and they're all there. Would I want to do something with my speech to make it more understandable to English as a second language? Is there a strategy there? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, I think that you always have to cater to the majority in the room, actually. I think that you don't want to cater to the lowest common denominator, in that then you've lost everybody else. So it really, I think that most speeches, at least the ones that I give, I try to not use the $10 words. I try to use the $1 words. And if possible, tell more stories. I didn't go into that enough related to stories. So if you don't mind, Michael, I'll just go on this for a minute. But stories really are able to penetrate any audience. So I should have focused more on that, and I will now. It is great to have prepared notes, but at some point in your prepared notes, you should actually have just something in brackets that says, tell the story about blank, whatever it is. And it's a story that you know really well. It's a story that you can speak to away from the podium because you know it so well. It's that kind of opportunity that will build relationship with your audience. So let me just say about stories, if you want to meet everybody in the room, you want to be able to speak to everyone in the room, tell more stories, and tell stories you know well. Don't write them out completely, just know them so well that you can walk away from the podium and begin speaking. And I think that will connect with anyone regardless of their vocabulary or how long they've been in Canada, provided they speak English or French.
Hi, Paul Lindsay from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Just a question relating to the writing of speeches. There are some candidates, or perhaps lots of candidates, that sort of have speechwriter assistants that do a large portion or a majority portion of writing substantial speeches. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on over-editing of speeches and ensuring that if you have someone that's helping you to write a speech, that they actually have enough experience to write something that's going to be spoken rather than something that's going to be read?
So to the first question, yeah, getting someone to write your speech can be a great thing, especially if there's someone who knows you, because you want them to write in your voice. Someone can get to know you by having conversations with you. Most of you won't be able to afford a speechwriter. If you have a speechwriter, it's going to be like your wife or your husband, and they're going to help craft it for you. And that's fine. I think that having someone collaboratively work with you is a great thing. I don't think that you can over-edit. I think that every time you perform a speech in practice, it gets better and better. It feels more familiar in your mouth. Have I hit all the things? So I would say nobody's going to be hiring a professional speechwriter. If I am a professional speechwriter, and I know that none of you will hire me, because you're not going to have the money to do that, and that's fine, but you'll get better. You'll get better, and you'll look at professionals, you'll watch speeches that Max gives or other people have given, and you'll steal some ideas. You will, and that will be a great thing, and you'll make it your own.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Carol Olofsson from Winnipeg West, and I have no trouble with public speaking. I get very passionate. I have been called by friends a force of nature. And my question is, as a woman, should I tone it down more than a man would when I'm really passionate about something?
No, not at all. No, that would be a mistake to tone it down, especially if you have authentic feelings around it, and if you've crafted something that, in terms of the content, is very sound. Deliver it as forcefully as anyone.
Okay.
Why would you want to tone it down as a woman?
Well, I don't know, just because sometimes people perceive that, especially in very conservative circles, that a woman coming across as angry or something is, I know, different, or strong, is sometimes seen more negatively than a man doing so.
I understand. I think that what recent research would show is that men actually are very amenable to women in terms of their performance, and women like women speakers better overall, which is interesting. So they win on both counts. Men are amenable and want to see them do well, and then women like them better. So I'd say don't hold back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Wayne Simmons on Don Valley West. Want to ask a question with regard to debates. There's some really great historical debates, political debates. One comes to mind is William F. Buckley versus Gore Vidal.
Right.
And that's a very celebratory one where they're both really at each other. And I really like Christopher Hitchens in his time in terms of political style of discussing and debating, and really, the cut and par of a good debater. Who would you recommend in terms of, watching debates, and in terms of debate styles? Who would you recommend? I mean, if you wanted to do it for enjoyment, I could recommend, but I don't think it's very efficacious.
And the reason I don't think it's efficacious is the reason they do so well is because they've experienced copiousness, which is to say they've been immersed in the material. So you can watch them, but you'll never be like them. And you won't be like them until you actually imbibe at the material for so long that it becomes second nature. And I think you could get there. And then you could, then at that point you'd say, I notice how they interject. But that's going to be the extent of it. So much of it will be confidence. Confidence where you hear the Liberal candidate say something and you know that they're just wrong. And because you've studied it and because you know the study off the top of your mind, or because you've looked at this policy book so often that now you realize, I know where we stand on that. That's where the real crafting of the debate comes in, just being able to put the material in. So I don't know, I mean, it'd be fun to watch it, but I don't know that it's going to do you any good because it really comes from a place of authority and confidence, and that comes from knowing your material, right?
Hello, I'm Stephen Mack. I'm Central Ontario Coordinator and candidate Simcoe North. I'm also a failed rock star.
Are you?
I love public speaking. I have a pathological lack of stage fright. However, I found a difficult thing. My speeches vary in quality a lot, according to people who I ask to review. And the common denominator is, if I start a speech and it's going well, I feel like something's possessing me. And there's some kind of a muse, and I just go. I forget my script and prepared notes, and it happens, and everyone's happy. I like it. But when I do a written speech and have notes, it tends to be dull. And my fear, the stage fright that's brewing for me, is that most of the time the muse possesses me, and I do great. However, I always have this fear because the debate or the speech will be on a certain day at a certain place. What if it doesn't click? What if they turn the key and the engine doesn't go? Do you have any tips for mentally preparing to make sure that this whatever it is that happens that makes a speech good can happen? And I can't put the finger on it other than vaguely preparation. Any thoughts on this weird
Well, you
problem?
mentioned the preparation, and I really think that the notion that you can just go off the cuff, that's a unicorn. That really, I've seldom seen that happen. And sometimes you might think, wow, that was the best I've done, and it was all off the cuff. I would argue that it probably could have been better. And it probably could have been better if you had prepared. Mark Twain talked about the best speech that he ever delivered. And he said that what had happened was he wrote out this fantastic speech, he had the notes, and then he forgot it under a flower pot. And then he couldn't find it because he'd set it under this flower pot. And then he came and he delivered the speech, and he said it was the best speech he'd ever delivered because it was a combination of extensive preparation but also spontaneity. So that might be your model. Maybe you don't want the notes on the page, but I'll tell you, you should have written out everything anyway and then go leave it under a flower pot. But if you don't write everything out extensively, word for word, and practice it, more often than not, you'll just fail. So definitely you can go without notes, but you better have notes somewhere.
I'm Mark from Calgary, BBC Association CEO. I have a lot of candidates that are not here, and then my job is to recruit more candidates. So if ever I need to hire you to make those candidates less shy about their own public speaking, what are your fees?
Did you just ask me how much I charge?
Correct, because I believe in the PPC, and I believe that people like me that are
I would have. I mean,
will
I
make
do,
enough money, right?
I would say I would have to know the number of candidates. I'd have to know because I'd be happy to work with them. 5 candidates. I'd have to look at what we were looking. I'd have to look at their skills.
Like
even
a weekend.
Sorry?
2-day, like a weekend, like little.
Definitely, we could work it out. I don't want to scare anybody right now with a number.
Give us a goal.
A goal. Well, typically for an hour I charge. Do you really want to know this?
Yes.
Okay, I'm about $2,000 an hour.
Oh, great. I'm just $500. Okay, I know how much to make.
That's the truth.
Hello, my name is Kevin Dupuy, and I'm from Kitchener-Conestoga, the candidate. And there was a gentleman here earlier that was asking about getting professional speechwriters. And again, if they're charging $2,000 an hour.
Well, no, that's public speaking training. There's a
right.
difference because if you look for speechwriters, it's usually $200 for every 200 words.
Well,
I mean, that's just sort of a going rate.
Now, what I was going to offer was just another idea. What I did is I opened up a ChatGPT account. I send my ideas to ChatGPT. I have it write a speech for me. And then I have, because it uses some $10 words, I have to put those $1 words in so that it's speakable for me. But it was just something that we've used actually for some of my speeches that I've had to give, and also for web design. So if you're looking for information, ChatGPT or one of the other artificial intelligences is a phenomenal tool that can be used, and it certainly cleans up an awful lot of the verbiage if we're not wordsmiths.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Hi, Miles from Simcoe North. Same writing as Stephen Mack. One of the big challenges we face across central Ontario is that there's a fairly high percentage of retirees. So we've been struggling with this challenge of trying to reconcile the retirees and some of the semi-retired people, their desire for stability, continuity. They see us as outsiders that are going to rock the boat. So we need to figure out how to reach them in a way which I guess appeals to their better nature, I suppose, but also that their desire for stability, they want to get them to take a chance on a new party. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would go with what Eric was talking about. And if they're already conservative leaning, he's identified that the immigration issue is certainly a concern, and the culture war position is something that they're interested in. So the way that I would frame it, I would say is, we may be a new party, but we have the values you've held. We are the old values. And so that would appeal to them, I would think, to say, we've had to form this new party because you've been abandoned. And so we are actually the progenitors. We are the people carrying on your tradition. That's where I would go with it. Yeah.
Gilbert Jubinville, Oakville. In Canada, in all levels of government, we don't actually have a debate, and this drives me crazy.
You're right. Anyway, carry on. You're right.
That's it. So I have a few strategies. The problem is it costs me time on the clock. So I had a candidate say something like you said. They say a lot of really stupid things. And I want to have my 2-minute statement, which is already jam-packed. So sometimes I say, I was going to swear there, but sometimes I'll swear. I'll say, I'll fight back with a fact. Then I'll get back to my point. But the bottom line is we lose because it's a disadvantage for us and because it's not truly a debate. So do you have strategies to help candidate take over a non-debate, which is people talking back and forth, to turning it into a debate where we have a fighting chance? Because our policies are far superior, and if we had a true debate, I think we would win every time. So do you have strategies? Thank you.
Yeah, Gilbert, so I would first of all say your observation is powerful, that these debates that we go to are in fact not debates. When you do try to debate at these things, where you do try to actually have some clash, you're penalized for it. And so you lose time, or the newspaper writes up that you are a member of the WWE or something like that. So one strategy that I've suggested to clients is that whenever possible, say what you have to say, but leave a question. And this is really, it's not my preferred way, but for example, if I were going into a federal election and I was the PPC and I have 2 minutes to speak in a rebuttal, I'd leave 30 seconds for a question, and it would go something like this. I'd say, so I've explained our position on gender ideology. What I need to know from our Liberal member, and I'm going to put this to him right now, and I hope he'll answer us, is I want to know is when there are biological males in female prisons and we've seen that they're raping some of the members, is he prepared to do something about it? And then when he doesn't answer, you say, in my last session, in my last time on the clock, I was able to ask a question of the Liberal. I hope you noticed that he did not answer that he's willing to protect women. So I'm going to ask that he answer that last question and also this one. And so the only thing that I think could work in this very time-constrained debate system that we seem to have at our local levels is to pose the question, not have them answer, and remind the audience that they didn't, right? Because they don't let you have clash. Or what you could do is go to a local conservative church and ask that they allow for clash. And the way that that could be done is that you do, I'm getting into the weeds here, but you do a chess clock model where each participant is given, let's say, 15 minutes where they can speak and rebut as long as they want, but as soon as their 15 minutes are out, then it's gone. And if you could convince the organizers of a debate to do that, you could see more clash. So that might be something you could suggest to debate committees as well. Questions or the chess clock model?
Hi, my name's Dave Annis. I'm the candidate for London Centre, and you may have just answered part of my question right now. I listen to the Monk debates on a podcast, and so I can hear what they're saying. I don't really see how they're acting, and it seems really regimented. It's moderated. The moderator gives them a certain amount of time, and you generally don't hear them interrupting each other. On the other hand, I've seen other debates, usually local ones, where they are interrupting each other. And I'm wondering about the best way to react when you hear an outright lie said about your party or something that your leader said or purportedly did not say or should have said in their mind. So I have 3 daughters, and I know the power of a raised eyebrow. I become very familiar with eye rolls, and I have seen the power of just such body language, and then you've already talked about it. Should we react in that way when we hear someone say something worthy of it in private, but maybe not, or maybe so in a debate? I'm just wondering what you think we should do, how we should react.
It depends what the moderator is going to let you get away with, but absolutely you should react. You should absolutely react.
Is there a best way to react, though? Is an eyebrow raise, an eye roll?
It really is going to depend on the moderator. I know my biggest regret is from my 2019 campaign was that in my first debate, I was the person I wanted to be, and I was very combative, and then I changed my style, and I think that I wasn't as effective after that. And so for me, I'm a combative person, actually, and not in an uncivil way, but just I enjoy a little bit of back and forth. So for you, I would say, what are you comfortable with? What will the moderator be able to stand? And then also see what the crowd is doing. I mean, you're going to feed off the crowd. If the crowd is actually pleased by what you're doing, maybe that will influence your decision to keep going. It's got to be clever, though, right? Okay. It can't be, when you are reacting, it's got to be a headline that you'd want to see. You really think of it that way. Is my rejoinder a headline that would make people laugh or make people think that I'm witty? If not, then you're better off not saying something and just doing the eye roll or whatever you think is the good body language.
Okay, thank you.
I think to COVID and when the media said, we are speaking out against misinformation, and then there's a clip of all the same news agencies saying the exact same thing at the exact same time. I find the debates are just like that. So, my question, since it's the same all across Canada, who owns, pays for, and sponsors these debates?
Well, if it's at the local level, you'll always get one from the Chamber of Commerce. And they're going to talk about issues related to taxes. You know that that's going to come. The environmental lobby is really rock solid across Canada. There will always be an environmental debate. And there will be probably a debate from some multicultural organization as well. These are pretty standard. The groups that very seldom hold a debate are those that are conservative organizations. I often thought, it would be worthwhile just to start a conservative organization that really maybe never meets, but its whole purpose is to establish itself and then hold debates where there will be conservative questions asked, right? Outside of a church, it's just, we are the, I don't know, give yourself a name. We're the Cambridge Political Visionaries. That's our group. And we've got thousands of members, or recruit people and then hold a debate. And that's your whole thing. Or go to conservative churches and get them. Is that good, JD?
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi there. I'm Justin Cocker. I'm going to be the candidate for.
Did you just say you're the NDP candidate?
No,
you're
Justin
in the wrong room.
Cocker.
I'm kidding. Sometimes I play up the deafness.
Okay.
I was just joking.
I just want to know, what do you think about using like a Rogerian style argument for a speech as opposed to a one-on-one conversation?
Sure.
'Cause, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And again, if you think that you can powerfully bring forward your position that way, then do it. Again, we're trying to accommodate a system that is really stacked against us. The questions that you're asked in a debate are typically not anything related to the policies of the People's Party, or at least they're meant to make them look bad. And so you really have to be crafty. You have to go in and be a happy warrior, is what you really have to do. Don't let them win. Go in and be the person you want to be. Be prepared and enjoy yourself. And know that part of your mission is simply being able to tell people who have never heard these arguments, the arguments. I had an experience. I was at a debate. I don't even know what the group was, but this is, again, 2019. And the reporter from the local newspaper, the KW Record, and if this is on video, I stand by it, she comes up to me and she says, "Wow, you really won that debate. I'm sorry I can't say that." And she thought I would appreciate her honesty. I kind of did. But the other part of me was like, how do we win? Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a divergence.
But I think you answered it, and thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll have to wrap this session up.
Hi, I'm Nikita Mahood, candidate of record for Flamborough, Glanbrook, Brant North, which is Hamilton. My question is a little offside to your topic, but in the what's our best recourse when we're blocked from debates? I was blocked from debates in the previous provincial election with the PPO,
right.
And I pushed, and I was allowed to submit a video mid-debate, but I was not allowed to participate.
Why were you blocked? What excuse did they give? It was because you hadn't the polling numbers or something?
They only invited red, blue, green, and orange.
Well, at the federal level, you're in a better position because there are some rules that were established by the debate commission that said if you're polling, Martin would know better, is it 4% or 6%? 4? Right, and therefore, so you won't have to, I'm assuming you won't run into that problem now because there's that particular threshold. No, it doesn't. It does. Oh, at the local, I used that as ammunition at the local level, and they don't know. Like, people don't know. So you just, right? You just, hey, the election commission has said I get to be here.
Yeah.
Did you not? And so, see, I thought I was actually legit, Martin. I wasn't legit. I'm never going to tell them. So I was equivalent. It was equivalent to me saying my mom says I can. Okay. But so anyway, I would say, they do hold all the power,
yeah,
essentially. And what do you do when they say no? You turn it into a story, if you can, and if the media will run with it.
Use it to our advantage.
Yeah, use it to your advantage, although it's not an advantage. You want to be in the debates.
Absolutely.
You really do. You might have to, what do? You get the petition going, and you get the support. You know what? You could use it as a viral moment. So if you were with me as a client, I would say, okay, you're out of the debates. We're going to go to the campaign offices of all the other people, and we're going to make this a free speech issue. So we're going to go to the Liberal incumbent or the Conservative incumbent and say, Now, she can't be in the debate. Do you respect freedom of expression? Do you believe that she should be there? How do you feel about people who are a little bit different in their opinions from you? And then we use that. Make them say, no, I won't let her be in the debate. If we could use it to our advantage that way, by making the other side look like tyrants, that's what I would do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One last question.
Oui, ok, bonjour. Si vous le permettez, j'aimerais parler
Martin,
en
can you?
français.
Yeah, I will translate.
OK. Alors, moi, j'ai une question pour savoir comment faire, parce qu'il y a de la propagande ici à Gatineau, entre autres dans le parc Fontaine. Comme par hasard, il y a des pièces de théâtre, et là, ils promouvoient le LGBT, QIA+, entre les cas. Vraiment, là, et juste...
Okay,
Oui. Et
just a second, I will translate. So what's your name first?
My name is Claire Dubois.
Okay, Claire is saying that there's a lot of propaganda locally in the parks here in Gatineau and theater plays, is that it? With like LGBTQ, AI plus WYZ anyway. Okay.
OK. And aussi, il y a de la propagande, même à la Maison du Citoyen. Une fois, je suis allée à la bibliothèque, et puis il y avait une grande pancarte de les Nations Unies qui parlait d'éducation, de richesse, que tu sais, les gens allaient être riches, puis vraiment...
So also lots of propaganda from the UN at the local library with redistribution of wealth globally, etc.
Et justement, finalement, j'ai assisté, et c'était sur l'éducation, puis j'ai été un petit peu dans l'éducation. Et finalement, là, j'ai commencé, je les écoutais, je ne savais pas d'allure, tu sais, c'était vraiment tous des jeunes, woke. Et puis finalement, ils ont fait venir le gardien de sécurité pour me chasser de la Maison du Citoyen.
So she was there, you were asking questions. Vous essayez de poser des questions?
Oui, je posais des questions, puis je répondais, je parlais. Eux autres,
so she was trying to ask questions at a woke debate at the Maison du Citoyen, the citizens' house here in Gatineau, and they asked security to get her out.
No, I didn't ask. They asked.
They asked security.
They asked
to get her out.
security.
So when she asked questions, she was asked to leave. Is that what?
Yes.
And so how to avoid that?
They asked security.
They called the security.
They called the security to get her out.
And
were you speaking? Was she speaking? Were you speaking on behalf of the People's Party at the time?
No,
you were there and you were trying to just get some answers.
By coincidence, I was there, and I saw that. I said, oh, I will check.
Is the question how not to get kicked out?
What?
Is the question how not to get kicked
out?
out?
Oh, they kicked me out very fast, I asked some question, what's that? And I was asking, what are you doing with that? You're going to teach it to children, young children at the daycare and things like this? And very fast, they called the security.
C'est quoi votre question?
Ma question, c'est quoi faire dans ces situations?
So what I would say is this. I would say, bravo for going in and asking the questions. Well done.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for doing that. And we should all be doing that, incidentally. And it seems like, just from the question, there's a certain amount of civility there as well. So how do you make that into, how do you take that manure, or how do you take that poop and turn it into very profitable manure? You videotape yourself, right? You videotape yourself, and that's the best we can do, because we can't make them not throw us out for asking truthful, innocent questions. We can't. They're still going to, but what you want to do is videotape that and then say, look it. In my neighborhood, and this will be the last thing I say, we have a teacher, her name is Carolyn Brzezinski. And Carolyn Brzezinski went before our school board, our local school board, public school board, and she simply asked questions about the pornographic books that are available to elementary school students. And she said, here's the list of books, here's the kind of things they include, pictures of fellatio, the very accessible to all these kids in their libraries, and she asked questions, and she was shut down. And the school board said, not only that, we're going to place you on suspension. But all of it was on video. And so that became very, very important. And people could see that she was asking sincerely, and she was asking respectfully. And it was the local school board, in particular the chair of the school board, who became the villain. And even our very woke local news sided with Carolyn because they saw the evidence. So if you're in that situation where you're asking the questions, you're bold enough, be respectful, be civil, have your facts straight, but get it on video, because that is really the only way that you're able to advance your position. Thank you.
Dr. David Haskell, ladies and gentlemen, always full value. I have here just a token of our appreciation. We have the PPC mug. I'll give that to you. And of course, we can't let you get away without an official pair of PPC socks. Thanks again. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick 30-minute break. Originally, we had scheduled for 45 minutes, but you all just seem so involved in what we have here today. Please be back here in 30 minutes. We have our last session of the day. This is an important one, how to build an effective team. Our own Adrian Zakowski will be up in 30 minutes right here live at ReVision 2024. Back into the main room. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. This is your 5-minute warning until our last session of the day, which will be on team building. And if you haven't had a chance yet to check out some of our great vendors in the vendor space, I wanted to draw folks' attentions to the Druthers newspaper. Druthers is a kind of right-wing, libertarian, alternative news source that publishes stories you're not going to find anywhere else. These guys operate on a shoestring budget. They work very, very hard to try and get messages out to the public that are often suppressed by mainstream media. Please stop by, grab a copy of Druthers if you haven't done so yet, and share it with your friends.
Waterloo, see you. All right.
You guys bored yet?
Thank you for coming here, George. Oh my, yeah, this is great. Love the swag. Love all the people here.
Okay, folks, I think we want to start our last session of the day. Please take your seats. This is a very important speaker we're going to have today, and some great stuff to be discussed. Before that, though, I do want to remind folks about the videos. If you haven't had a chance to get your video recorded today, well, you're out of luck, because they have closed down the booth. So today there are no more videos, but we did ask our video crew to come back tomorrow. So if you want to be included in the documentary, or if you're a candidate looking to take advantage of the free marketing material and collateral that we have here, please visit the video crew early tomorrow morning and make sure that you do your 2-minute introduction. One other housekeeping item, we will have photos for candidates at 5:15, so immediately following this presentation. Candidates are requested to please line up at the photo booth. It's just behind the registration table. We will be doing professional headshots of each candidate on a green screen that we can then help use for things like your brochures or your other marketing material. Maybe we'll use it in a video, but we want to take advantage of having everybody here to get your marketing materials and to ensure that we're putting your best face forward on a go-forward basis. Oh, absolutely, yeah. You get your photos and, yeah, let's do that. Born under the oppressive shadow of the Soviet Union, Adrian forged a path to resilience and leadership. His journey, marked by early challenges and personal growth, has culminated in a deep commitment to shaping a better future for Canada. A strategic thinker with a keen eye for detail, Adrian brings a unique blend of professional acumen and human understanding to his work. Transitioning into the realm of political campaign management, Adrian applied his expertise to drive strategic initiatives and build successful campaigns. Today, he leverages this wealth of knowledge to contribute to the People's Party of Canada as our national coordinator. He's driven by a passion for preserving Canada's heritage and upholding principles of freedom and equality, and he's dedicated to supporting the People's Party of Canada in its mission to create a nation that honors its past while embracing a prosperous future. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm ReVision welcome to Adrian Zakowski.
Totally playing me up. That was pretty impressive. Okay, so yes, this is an exceptionally important component to everything that we're going to be doing, especially if you're a participant in the organization. So that means regional association, candidate, campaign team. This is an exceptionally important component. And if you were in the role of a candidate with us earlier today, you'll notice that there was a big focus on one of the the role of a candidate is team building. So if you want to know more about this, this is it. So a little bit of a preview and just a disclaimer. So we did have somebody that was meant to cover this, a subject matter expert. So if there is terminology or I have a little pause here and there, I am following a presentation that was preset, so we'll do our best. I apologize if there's a little bit of a disconnect or a pause here and there, but I do have experience in this area as well. I am just looking at somebody else's presentation preparation. So if you're looking at this, building our team. So this applies to the PPC, this applies to us nationally, regionally, locally, candidate. This ultimately is the question, why? Why do we need to build a team? Why is there a need for effective team building in the first place? And a lot of this comes down to the challenges that are inherent in a volunteer organization. It's easier to build a team in a corporation, a business, because there's salaried roles, there's expectations, so the need to understand what effective team building ultimately is because this is volunteer effort. Political parties, political entities is all volunteer. So how do we do this is going to be the big question. And why is it so exceptionally important? We ultimately need to outline clear roles, clear expectations, clear reporting structures to avoid confusion, missed expectations, conflicts, and ensure everybody does understand what they're contributing to. So this is why we're going to talk about this. I don't have a clicker, so can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So if you take nothing else away from this today, I want you to pay close attention to this. This is the exceptionally important component that I want you to pay attention to. We're starting at the bottom of this, and if you can see this, it's expectations where it factors into trust and conflict at the very bottom. And the absence of trust is where everything ultimately starts, for better or worse. So this is what we have been doing. For those of you that have dealt with us at HQ, that we've talked about this, we need to increase our communication. We need to increase our ability to speak up, team members to help each other, and leverage our strengths of each other. So when we talk about our associations, when you hear from us, what are these roles? It's to define these expectations so you can begin to trust. You can't have an organization without trust. And if we go down to the campaign and candidate level in your riding, campaign development is this. You're building trust. It is not about being trustworthy. It is about, can you be trusted and why should people trust you? So if you're a candidate, this is why this is so exceptionally important for you. It's not about, are you trustworthy in your own estimation? It is why should people trust you? So for the candidates in the room, you caught a little bit of this morning. This is exceptionally important. And for those that are on our teams, in our associations, the same applies. Why should anybody trust us or trust you as a team to want to participate and continue participating and continue giving their time and continue endeavoring to help? A lot of the absence of trust comes from the hesitancy to ask for help. You find that to be true? Because I know that's what I did in the past long ago. You always hesitate. So that's why we say communication is critical. We got to get past this absence of trust in our organization nationally and riding teams, candidate teams. We have to give people the opportunity to ask for help and open that door. So that's why I keep harping on high level of communication. If you're a candidate, call, contact, do not silo off, do not stay quiet. There is never going to be trust built to grow together as a national organization and locally for your campaign teams if that doesn't happen. So we want to make sure to move past that. The next one here is the fear of conflict. And that is, so the conflict component is not meant to be just purely negative. The whole concept of conflict is just disagreement, conflicting or different expectations that need to be clarified. So a lot of what's on the USB sticks that you have with the initial documentation on our operational policy, our code of conduct, it's to clear those expectations and make sure that it's easier to understand so some of the most basic conflicts and disagreements no longer exist. So what does that weave into here when I say conflict isn't necessarily a negative thing? So fear of conflict. Conflict within the organization can be easily addressed and can increase commitment. So it kind of sounds weird maybe, but this is why. Let's say there's disagreement between an association team and a campaign team. Well, how do you resolve that? You may have conflict at the beginning of the conversation, but the whole point is to get it out in the open so that you understand each other's expectations, you understand where we're aligned, where we're not aligned, what needs to be done. How do we need to navigate this? So again, don't be afraid of conflict. As Maxim has said in the party, it's okay to have disagreements and have dialogue. This is essentially what this is, but at an organizational level. So when the conflict is in its negative component, there's a lack of transparency. Issues are not raised in the moment. Again, lack of communication. So you're going to keep hearing this over and over again, communication. So, again, it goes back to the needs to have open conversation, address those expectations together. And that's where, from myself and the office, we will come into play into this to help. And that's why we're going to have a little more of an open door policy if you're on the team somewhere. So that's just to give you a little bit of confidence that we can have that open discussion and mitigate conflict. But if you detect this, if you're having these issues, again, don't stay quiet, right? So we want to make sure to do that. So on a personal level, team building is also one's own expectations and ability to communicate the awareness of situations. Can I go to the next slide, please? Can I have the next slide? I think the presentation is just cycling the side notes. We're not going up to the lack of commitment and all that stuff. We're just covering the bottom two. There we go. So in team dynamics, this is where now you, me, the people, our expectations on an individual basis come into play. So this part where is a little bit of self-evaluation. So if you have your notepads, I want you to really play a part here right now. So we're going to look at this. So in the team dynamics, you'll see here listed 1 to 6 is the degree of missing your expectations, whatever that may be, and 7, 8 is exceeding or meeting your expectations within the team, within your local team. Expectations and communication, aware of clearly stated expectations. I want you to think about your local team. What's happened? And have your expectations been met? Have you had difficulty with this? Are you aware of clearly stated expectations among your team? Please note this down, because this is going to play a factor if you're on a team. Because as we work together, we need to know what's going on. Does your team need to have more clearly defined expectations within your regional dynamic? Not everyone's going to be the same. There's going to be differences from team to team. Trust. Do you have trust within your team players? And this especially, again, applies to candidates in your teams. Is there trust to raise a problem? To have that hard discussion? Are there any solutions? Conflict. Have you been able to do that? Is this something that you can do? How would you rate that for your specific team and yourself within that team? And this may be a little bit of a firmer one. If you're on a team where you have a role, a dedicated role, your commitment to the role, to the process, and to your relationships? Or have we been kind of in and out, on the fence, not sure what we're doing, on the way out, not sure what to do next? Note that down, please. Think about your role in the organization, because again, we're going to cover this together. And accountability. Is your team following through on the actions that you expect to achieve? Have you gotten to the point where you have actions that you expect to achieve? If there aren't, why not? Is that something that's a problem? Okay, so the individual team dynamic is exceptionally important, and the local level is particularly important, because we're going to be talking about that, the national side, myself, and our teams as we go. So if I can go to the next slide, please. So expectations. So I want you to note down here, what is one expectation you have of our team? And I mean nationally, the PPC, if you're a participant in it. What are we meeting? What are we missing? And what I'm going to define here is what is the expectation component. We're going to define it and how conflict works. To the degree that we can navigate and build successful teams as volunteers in our organization depends on how we react. So part of the team building is not just reacting emotionally. And I will give examples to this in a moment. In most cases, people react emotionally to a missed expectation. That, unfortunately, does not yield solutions and results. We need to know the meaning of the purpose. So I'll give you a quick example. And I'll actually use the one here that our presenter was supposed to be instead of me, on missed expectations. And how do we navigate this properly so we have good relationships, we can resolve conflict, we can learn from it, and it's still okay, and we're moving forward as a team, as a united front. So our presenter had some travel challenges. Were we upset? Absolutely. What we didn't do was react emotionally, get upset, and then shut the conversation down. What we did was we had the discussion and described the meaning of why we're upset. Well, we're disappointed because you're not able to make it. This was an exceptionally important thing. We don't want to do a virtual meeting for this. People need to interact. We need to talk about this. We need to have interactive, like I just said, note down what you're maybe not hitting. That's what we mean by the meaning of this, why this is important. Emotion alone is not going to solve this, is not going to bind the teams together. If you're a candidate, please take note of what I'm saying here. When somebody on your volunteer team is not hitting their commitments, whatever it may be, reacting emotionally is only going to drive people away. You can be emotional, but define the meaning of why. Why were you upset? So we have a great relationship with our partner here as to what's happening. He understands why we're disappointed. It's not just an emotional reaction. Yes, we're disappointed, but he understands why. Because populism, we need, as a populist movement, we need personal touch, personal interaction. We could do a virtual meeting anytime. You need to be able to ask questions, understand what's going on, be part of the discussion here, right? So this is what we mean. You have to be able to define the meaning. What's the story behind it? So if you're building a team as a candidate, if you're building a team as an association, and you have volunteers or people that are simply, maybe they're not showing up, whatever it may be, or something's not being done, it's okay to state your disappointment in that and say, hey, listen, what are you doing? But it's not good enough to react, drive people away. We want you to be a little more sensitive to this and explain to people why, because people that know why will more readily come back and commit, understanding that you're not upset with them, you're upset with the situation and you need a bit of commitment, okay? So our strongest teams in the country right now have good communicators that don't react blindly, that don't simply get upset, but they talk to their teams. They talk to their volunteers. Their volunteers know that, hey, listen, I didn't hold up my end. I know I disappointed you for reason X, Y, Z. And now they can come back because they know nobody's holding a grudge against them, right? It's open communication. And it's okay to have that little bit of conflict if it's positive. So to kind of wrap that up again, obviously as humans, our first reaction is always emotional. But again, practice, if you're a leader in the organization and you're dealing with volunteers, make sure to give them the underlying reason, especially if you're a candidate. Well, why? Why isn't this working out? What happened here? It's okay to be bold, okay? Take your lead from Maxim. It's okay to be bold. All right? So if I can go to the next slide, please. So let's look at this. And this one I'll be quick with, but it's a bit of a crossover, and it's, again, particularly important for candidates. So in terms of authenticity and sincerity with volunteers, people you interact with, potential voters, potential people that you come into contact with that may be voters, the authenticity and sincerity of everything you deal with is important, and this is surrounding trust, because future volunteers, future people that are going to be on your team need to know you're authentic and sincere, even when maybe you're upset or disappointed. So in the aim of building trust with what I mentioned before, the absence of trust starts at that level when you first interact with people. So always be authentic, always be sincere. Empathy is really just your ability, ultimately your ability to really just be honest with somebody. It's just, we're not ever going to be able to fully understand somebody else's situation, why they didn't do something, but it's okay to, again, be honest in your emotions and understand where they're coming from and take that under advisement. Don't have to agree with it, but be honest. Understand that people have their own expectations that may not align or may not even be well explained. And logic, and coming into logic and competency. This is really more your ability and our ability to change our behavior to achieve different results. How competent and capable are we to do that? So especially true for leaders in the organization and our candidates building teams of volunteers. When things aren't working, when expectations aren't met, when you have disappointments, can you change your necessary and our necessary personal behavior to achieve different results, to make those changes, to learn how to talk to people, listen to them, hear them out, and alter expectations. Ultimately, commitment is the ability to overcome adversity without caveats. What does that mean? Caveats is just a fancy word for excuses. So, if I say I'm committed to being on time, what does that mean? Be on time? Just treat your word? Do most people do that? So, missed expectations, conflict, absence of trust. So, our leaders, our candidates, what we're saying and our expectation as a party and what we're building is that our candidates and our leaders need to be committed to their word. So that expectations are met on the end of the volunteer, the supporter, the voter. We're essentially trying to elicit trust and hope from people, but that is only as good as our competency allows and not making excuses. So when we say the role of a candidate, what do candidates need to do? You need to be consistent. You need to go out there. You need to show yourself. And letting your calendar dictate the terms of engagement. It's so that it's an easy and competent and logical way for you to engender trust and move past conflict so that the expectation of people within your team as a local campaign team is met every time. They know you're true to your word. They know you're going to do what needs to be done. This translates to our teams and our associations that are elected into these positions. This is what we're looking for. If we're going to be an effective populist movement, we have to be good for our word. We don't have the ability to rest on the laurel of brand power, where your grandparents have been voting for the PPC, so that's how you're going to vote. Well, that doesn't exist. So we have to build authenticity, sincerity, be able to meet our volunteers where they're at, allay their concerns, and be competent about how we're going to build trust. And really, it's just as simple as no caveats, no excuses. If other people do them on your team, again, move past conflict and make sure you understand why. So also, part of this logic and competency is the ability for you, if you're a candidate, when you build the team, if somebody does not hold up something or leaves you high and dry, if you will, is being able to communicate effectively so that you can give them another opportunity to succeed. People that know that there's room to recover, succeed, and get better are going to be committed to you long term because they know we have a forgiving attitude, a forgiving tone, and we leave room for growth. Can we agree to do that together if you're a candidate? Yeah? So if I can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So if we talk about caveats, so it's all about the caveats. So again, I touched on this already, so I'll move past this quickly. But a lot of people that have caveats. So let's say, I'll just give an example. I'm sure you've all had somebody at work that shows up late on a certain day and then stands around the boss or supervisor and has a million reasons as to why they were late that day, right? Yeah? I remember. Am I the only one? Okay. So that's a sign of character. So for candidates, for leaders in the organization, we can't do this. We can't be showing up and having all these caveats to why we can't do something, why we can't attend to that, or grow the team this way, or show up for a forum, or a debate, or any of this stuff, if we're going to succeed, if we're going to elect people. Again, the PPC is not all-star brand power yet. This all depends on us as a movement, as an effort, and being true to these things. Let me put it to you this way. If you're on the team, if you're a candidate, if you're on our association with the new procedural policy that's in your USB sticks, this applies to others. Excuses and caveats apply to others, not to you and me. But it doesn't mean you have to be hyper-committed and burning all your spare time if you're a candidate. It's being just true to yourself, being consistent, being committed, and laying out expectations for us at the office, for your team, of what degree you're going to do this, so the expectation of your people are real. And so if all you can do, maybe you have a crazy schedule and you're doing some kind of coffee shop night or whatever it may be as a candidate in your riding to meet people, well, hold to that. If it's suddenly rainy or you're sick, but it's just something light, figure it out. No caveats. Make sure people know to expect you. Oh, I'll pick on you, Brian, because you're right here. So everybody knows, well, Brian's been doing this for 12 months solid, rain or shine. I'm going to the next one. That's where volunteers start to appear, when they know you're solid, they can trust the expectation is real. You define the expectation by the patterns of your behavior, by my behavior. How do you grow a team and bring more volunteers out of your member base? No caveats, patterns of expectations that you build based on your action. So that the people that are coming out of the member base, the support, they are the ones that are seeing this, and the expectation is automatically generated right in the community. They know that Brian's solid, he's going to be there again, he's doing more. They don't even have any idea how busy or what challenges Brian may have. That's not the point. They don't have to know. They just need to know he's going to be there. Because then they trust him, then the voter conversion happens, then they start voting. So I know that's a little bit of a meandering. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, okay. Okay. So, as a bit of an exercise, next slide, please. We're going to touch on this, and I want you to note this down. What are you committed to in your life? Especially if you're a candidate, I really hope you're noting these down for yourself. Otherwise, we're going to have a talk. But why is this here? It's to define expectations. It's to make expectations clear to yourself. These are not for me, they're not for anybody else. What are you committed to in your life? This will define what you commit to, what pattern you commit to, what time you can dedicate, so that that expectation and that trust can be built based on something you can continue to do properly. So what are those personal commitments? What are the professional commitments? What's taking those top spots in your life that you need to balance to make sure the expectation of your people, your volunteers, is achievable? You don't want to go for some far-flung thing where you're committing 10 hours a week if that's not humanly possible. Your personal and professional commitments matter, because this will define what an effective candidate and your effective volunteer leadership in the organization if you're part of an association. So we want to make sure that you're balancing your leadership as a candidate, your leadership as a team properly, so that when you do deal with your volunteers, you have something laid out, you know what your calendar looks like. You know what professional and personal commitments you have that you need to create realistic expectations among your team for them to expect from you. So if all you can do is 2 hours every 3 weeks for something as a candidate or a team or somebody on the team, do it and tell people and be honest. And make sure that we approach this with competency. Otherwise, we're always going to be struggling and chasing after volunteers, if you hear what I'm saying. So if we can go to the next slide. So these ones, I'll be using a little bit of my own terminology. I apologize. Our presenter had slightly different choice of or leadership training than I did, but it's the same concept, same principles, but I may be using different terminology than you may see on the screen here. This goes back to our initial slide with absence of trust, conflict, and how you manage you as a leader. So choice number 1 in this case is the active approach. As thoughts hit your mind, words come out. It's how you mitigate this and how your volunteers are perceiving this. And if you drive volunteers away because of that emotional reaction without defining the meaning, is understanding yourself. If you're an outgoing, sanguine personality, you're probably saying what you're thinking. Anyone in here like that? I actually know some of you, so you can't hide. I know some of you. What this is knowing oneself. Because if you're going to be a leader and engender trust in a team, you need to know which one you are. Can we go to the next one? Next slide, please. And choice 2, and I'll be completely transparent with everybody, this is me right here. So for my terminology, I'm what's known as a phlegmatic melancholy. I'm 2 sides of the introvert coin. You may be thinking, well, you're on stage speaking, you know what you're doing. Yeah, well, that's called 10 years of brutal leadership experience and butt kicking by a mentor. So in this particular case, if you're a thinker, if you're more restrained, if you listen to what people are saying, before you actually do something and you need to know the details behind what's happening, you're more like me. So I'll speak to this side first before we go back to the other one. If you're a candidate, if you're a leader in the organization, how you react is extremely important, because understanding yourself is going to impact your people. So for myself, I think about things. Usually I'll mull things over for 48 hours if it's, let's say there's a really bad conflict and I don't like what I'm hearing. I'll probably get very blunt and not want to talk about things. I've learned to mitigate this because people like myself can tend to be very brutal if it's not restrained, and I'd probably destroy a team if I had one. I would just tell people like it is, quietly, with logical reasoning, and probably just do damage to the entire grouping that I'm trying to lead. So, in this particular instance, we have to use our personalities, whether we're outgoing or introverted, to our advantage. You have to think about how your particular style will help generate followers in your community as you communicate. What are your blind spots? The thing about introverts is we're usually not very empathetic. Pretty mechanical, mostly logical. We don't always engender ourselves well if we're not trained. So please think about this. If you're this kind of person like me, make sure to practice putting a smile on your face. I'm being very honest. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Make sure you're smiling. Us introverts tend to be very stoic. We don't like to be in a room full of people. But there are things you can do. So if you're a candidate, if you're a leader in the organization, practice smiling. Practice talking to one person at a time and listening to them. That's a very real way you can move through this. You can hear what people are saying. If you're like me, I don't want to talk to a group of people because it's just overwhelming. I'm like, I'm out of here. I don't care about what anybody says. And that can come off very cold, unempathetic, and you're going to lose trust. So going back to the first one, if you're the outgoing personality, you're the active one, and you say what's on your mind, you can be influenced by groups of people or different thoughts more easily. If you're in the PPC, we're a principled and value-positioned party. We're populist. We don't apologize. We're bold. That means we stand behind our platform positions. So what does that mean for you? If you're the outgoing, sanguine personality type and you say what's on your mind and maybe you're a little too influenced when in a room, you have to practice your positions. This is why, as the candidates, if you're a candidate, you're going to be getting information on an ongoing level to practice your messaging. Practice what beforehand. This is especially important for you. Practice beforehand your positions. Practice beforehand what you're going to say. Program yourself with the things that you believe in, but make sure they're delivered the same time, every time, all the time. That way you won't be influenced. You can still say what's on your mind, but you revert to those points when dealing with people, when dealing with your team in a predictable manner where people can trust you, where you don't say something different every time or fly off the handle if something's different, if you react. You have to practice our policy positions, practice our principled positions, know what you're going to say. And that goes for the associations as well when you're dealing with teams of volunteers. Please be aware of who you are. And again, for candidates, if this type of team building exercises and this knowledge, if you find it useful, we're going to be talking a lot more about that on a custom level, okay? And that's why I say communicate, because we will be talking a lot more about this. We won't be getting into communication styles and these matters because we don't have a lot of time. But again, going back to these styles, people that are introverted, like me, can be perfectionists, can want things to go well. We can be more rigid, and that can be, again, perceived the wrong way. So the main thrust of this is, at the basic level, start understanding yourself. Because if you're a candidate, we're going to talk more about this, because this is going to affect how the kind of effective team that you can build, how you present yourselves to potential volunteers. Are they going to trust you? So again, please think about that first slide with conflict and trust. It all begins there. We have to get past this. So we can't be reactionary. We have to define why and tell people and be empathetic in this process still. But move past it and be okay with conflict and get it out in the open. It's okay. All right? So I'll wrap it up. I guess okay, so because we're wrapping up and we're cutting a little bit short, I can answer some questions, and if anybody has any questions that they want. If there's something I can't answer, we will field it and pass it to our friendly neighborhood specialist that wasn't able to make it here today. But we want you to be open, and it starts here. So if you have any questions on this subject matter or something here you heard today, we'll take a few minutes for questions.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So the question that I have, Adrian, is everything I'm hearing is really amazing, and it sounds to me, based on this particular presentation with respect to leadership, that we're talking about communication, and through that, one of the things that I haven't heard about is ego, and that is something that I would love for you to talk about, how we actually, in order to communicate properly, we need to drop ego out of the equation and be human with one another and treat one another as though we're friends and family, as opposed to focusing on ego. What are your words on that?
So we weren't getting too deep into it, But yes, it's absolutely a deep part of this, but it all begins with understanding oneself. That's why we had you write stuff down, what your commitments are, because some of this will draw, like if you're a candidate, we'll be talking. We'll be seeing what you wrote down, for instance, and what's driving you, what's taking up your time. Is it personal? Is it something that's, that is really just more of a distraction? What's going on? So to the point of ego, we can't force people to accelerate personal growth necessarily. So these steps here are the building blocks to what you're talking about, because we have to get our leaders, our candidates, into the mode of being a little more empathetic, understanding that we have to define why we're not happy with something. Because I'll give you a great example, and this will be actually very quick. The example here is you have people that are unhappy with a candidate because the candidate's maybe reactionary. If that candidate isn't learning because there's ego involved, there's precious little we can do. But by us as an organization knowing this, other people in the association, other people that are around can influence that, can help change that person. So we're talking about a larger scope of us together, of the expectation of the national organization together as well. But yes, we will address that. It's just something we're just scratching the surface, but yes, you're absolutely right. Self-driven purpose for self-achievement only in a personal or selfish way, it will derail team building because it is interfering with true and honest expectation and the competency of that.
Yeah, I was wondering, you're talking about the team building and that. Are we going to be getting any more like training videos or emails or anything like that?
The answer is yes. In the next several months, we will begin to do that because now that we have a better complement at the national office, thanks to our illustrious executive director, we have the ability to now get back to that. So it's going to be a collective of corporate training, so overall, as well as personal and individual. So yes, things like this will be formalized so that you have something to refer to.
Thank you, Adrian, for your presentation. Real quick, mentorship sounds like it was very important to you. Do you have some advice for especially new candidates stepping up, how they might find a mentor, or just the role of mentorship, especially, we've got a year to go, and a lot of people are coming up brand new to be candidates. Do you have any advice for them?
That's a wonderful question. Yes, mentorship is exceptionally important to me, and I'll substantiate it with a definition so you understand where I'm coming from. I had a very rough beginning where I didn't have the opportunity to go formally through university because my parents asked me to leave home. So I had, you could say, adopted parents, if you will, but this gentleman was a mentor to me. And he walked me through kind of the hard knocks of life. And eventually it led me through programs like this, through leadership training. Mentorship is exceptionally important if you're pursuing a certain subject matter or a certain direction. It helps you achieve a certain outcome and that expectation for your own life. So it's exceptionally important. The first steps is why I say communication. You will have, if you're a candidate, if you're a team member, you have an open door to myself. The starting point is right here. As we build a larger, better organization, we actually have people in our team that are life coaches and team builders. We will expand that pool. We will have people that address this with me. It's coming, but we have to grow it together. We have to grow the organization bigger so we have more people to pool, that we can have a quote-unquote coaching team to help you through this if you're a candidate and you're a team player. Okay? So I hope that answers that question.
Great. And with that, we do have to wrap things up, but I did want to just add a couple key points here. The question about ego, I think that is very important. My mom taught me something when I was a kid, and it has stuck with me for many, many years. And she said, Nathan, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You can be the smartest person in the world. You can have the best policies. In fact, I would argue we do have the best policies. But until people recognize what is the driving force behind that knowledge, what is the driving force that gets us up in the morning, they're not going to be receptive. It goes back to the 4 basic principles we talked about earlier today. Freedom, responsibility, fairness, and respect. We need to respect one another. We need to have a civil dialogue. We need to persuade people, not just with logic. Logic's important, and certainly we have that in spades. We're bold and we have the best policies. But we need to win hearts and minds as well. And that starts with getting ego out of the equation. That starts with having humility, looking at yourself and being able to admit, yeah, you know what? I don't always have the answers. I'm not always the smartest person. And you know what? I'm probably going to screw up quite a few times too. It takes a big person to be able to do that, but it's only by looking at yourself in the mirror, by practicing, by being honest with yourself, in surrounding yourself with those who will challenge you, that you'll be able to grow as an individual, that you'll be able to grow as a candidate, and you'll be able to be the type of leader that we need in this country. We have a dearth of leadership, a lack of leadership at all levels. We're seeing it. Our institutions are crumbling. We're seeing it in our governments. We're seeing it in our hospitals, in our schools. You pick a social organization, and there just aren't the leaders stepping up to take on these positions at a time when we're facing some of the biggest crises in generations. We need real leadership in this country. It starts with humility and getting ego out of the equation. So thank you for those questions. Thank you, Adrian, for stepping up and giving this presentation at the last minute. And with that, this does conclude the formal training portion of today's ceremonies. For those watching online, thank you for being with us. I got a stat earlier today. I think we had around 3,000 viewers throughout the day. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. 3,000 people at this conference. But before I let you go, there are a few other housekeeping items. If you are a candidate immediately following this, please get yourself prepared and make your way in behind the registration booth. We will be taking candidate headshots on a green screen. We paid a professional photographer a lot of money to make sure you all look good so that we can get your flyers and everything put together. So please do not miss out on this opportunity. That'll be going from now until 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., we invite you all back for dinner in the dining hall. We'll have dinner for about 2.5 hours, and we do have a couple of guest speakers and another fun little exciting tidbit. So you won't want to miss that. For those online, unfortunately, it won't be live streamed, but for those who are here, please return and join us at 7 o'clock. You'll have about an hour or so to go back to your hotel room, freshen up, do what you need to do, and dinner will start at 7 o'clock. Later tonight at 10 o'clock, we will have, after dinner, off-site a hospitality suite. What's a hospitality suite? Well, if you've been to a political convention or conventions in the past, basically it's an opportunity to get together with friends and colleagues and digest what you've learned today. Connect one-on-one over a drink. There won't be a ton of food. We're having dinner right beforehand, but if that's something that interests you, it will be happening off-site at the Best Western, just down the road here on Laurier Street, 131 Laurier Street. If you go out to the front of this building and turn left, it's about a 7-minute walk. I would encourage you to walk and not to drive if you're able. Please join us if you are able. Afterwards, we will have a shuttle. So there will actually be 2 shuttles tonight, one leaving from here at 10 o'clock following dinner. So if you need a shuttle back to the Quality Inn, that'll be happening tonight at 10. And then at 11:45, we'll have a secondary shuttle leaving from the hospitality suite for those who may have had a drink or two. We don't want anybody drinking and driving, so please, if you do choose to have a few drinks, make sure that you're either on that shuttle or taking a taxi or some other way home. Tomorrow, for those of faith, again, we wanted to invite you to attend our worship service. This is an evangelical, non-denominational Christian service. We'll have a selection of music followed by a short sermon. Breakfast is at 7:45. It will be a hot breakfast. I know today we had croissants and not something quite as heavy, but tomorrow is the full feast, so you're not going to want to miss breakfast tomorrow if you're a breakfast person. We're also going to have PPC partnerships, again, just to go over the itinerary. A fantastic opportunity to hear from many of our vendors and other organizations who are doing great things. So that'll happen tomorrow at 9 a.m. here on the main stage. And Elections Canada training will be happening in the Chapleau room. Please give some thought to that tonight. And if finance is your thing, you'll want to be in Elections Canada. If you're not quite sure, we welcome you to stay here on stage. And then the headliner tomorrow afternoon, or I should say tomorrow morning just before lunch, is Gender Ideology with Billboard Chris. I know many of you saw Chris mulling about. I don't know if he's still here with us, but this is one we've had many people ask about, and Chris is always full value. So I'm looking forward to that. We have a door-to-door campaigning session tomorrow, both in English and in French. That's going to be held by Paul Scheer here in English and another individual in French. So we'll don't miss that if you've never gone door-to-door campaigning, or maybe you have and you just want to pick up some tips and tricks from an old war veteran, I guess you could say. Paul Scheer is your guy, and he's going to guide you through the best way to do that. And then, of course, capping off the day tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we will have our speech with Leader Maxime Bernier. So please be around for that. That'll close off our conference. I want to thank everybody again for being here, those online, those here in person. Let's give ourselves a great round of applause. I think we've had a fantastic day. Thank you for all of your participation, and thank you to our speakers. Please join us for dinner, and thanks again for attending ReVision 2024.
Tu savais qu'il y avait des immigrants qui faisaient caca dans les centres commerciaux?
Oh non, moi je n'ai pas. Je pense que
Nobody does.